With us today, Dr. Mary Kay Anderson, who's director of our MTSU Counseling Services. Dr. Anderson is going to orient us today about her office and the services you provide for students and what we as faculty and student-facing staff might do to better support our students. So welcome, Dr. Anderson. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so what I'd like to cover for today is a really quick overview of what mental health is on most college campuses across the country. And that obviously applies to MTSU as well. The services for mental health that are available to students, and not just through our counseling center, but also other areas on campus so that you'll have an idea of what all is available. And as I go through that, I'm going to explain a little bit about how to approach students, how to make sure that a student is feeling heard and listened to, and also to help with you not feeling the pressure of having to do it a certain way. And I want to explain a little bit more about that as we go through this presentation. The last part that I think is super important is not just what are the mental health services available to our students, but what are the mental health services available to faculty and staff? I often get calls asking that very question. And I think it's important for everyone to be aware there actually is quite a few different resources available. So I'm going to go through those. And then at the end, I have a section for Q&A, but at any time, if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will be more than happy to answer. And this is a little quote that I think is really important for all of us to remember is caring for the mind is as important and crucial as caring for the body. In fact, one cannot be healthy without the other. I mean, your head is attached to your body, so that's pretty obvious, but I think sometimes that gets forgotten. Okay, so let's talk about what is mental health on college campuses these days. First of all, mental health is a lot to do with stress at times. And the common stressors that students experience when they come to college are moving away from home, learning the lay of the land of a new campus and where's my building, or even, if you have an activity and you need to make sure where that's located. Learning the area geographically outside of the actual campus boundary, making new friends, adjusting to the academic pace of college. Oftentimes, high school is much more structured than college, and students have to learn to create their own structure. And the pace is different. There are larger assignments due at different times, whereas in high school, it tends to be more uniform throughout a semester, where there are times that there's a heavier course load or things due at certain amounts of time. So students need to prepare for that. And that is a skill that they need to learn. Maintaining old friendships. Sometimes your friends don't go to the same college you do. And you may be struggling yourself making new friends while you see your other friends from high school flourishing with new friendships at other campuses. And that can feel really hard. And also their time or availability to maintain that friendship can be a challenge too. The last one is just finding time. We hear from everyone, I'm so busy, I'm just so busy. Figuring out how are you able to get everything you need to get done and want to get done in the time that you actually have in a 24-hour day. Okay, so here's some data from the 2022. This is from Student Mental Health American College Health Association. 52% of college students reported experiencing moderate psychological distress, and 25% reported experiencing serious psychological distress. 35% of students were diagnosed with anxiety. That means they actually went to a mental health provider and were actually diagnosed with that. And 27% with depression. Almost 9 in 10 students, we're talking about 89% who face academic challenges, say it affects their mental health. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among college students. Does anyone know what the first one might be? accidental deaths.
Oh.
That's a big umbrella for all car crashes and, yeah. So we currently have a new survey that was conducted last November, and the results are still universities. This is out of the School of Social Work. It's called the Tennessee Together survey that was done last November. So we're going to even have more recent data that's specific to MTSU. But this is what's happening across college campuses across the country. So now let's pivot to what services are available to our students, and we'll start with our counseling center. I like this quote because I think that we want everything faster and faster and faster. I'm learning how to relax, doctor, but I want to relax better and faster. And I want to be on the cutting edge. That's great. So I chose that quote because our counseling center for the past 7 years has switched its model of care to quick access. In years prior to that, you would try to schedule an appointment, and in busy times, it might be 3 weeks out. And you know that at the point that you feel that you need help is sometimes like, I don't want to call, I don't really need to. So the point where you finally get to that point, and then to be told you need to wait 3 weeks is really, not the best situation for someone who's finally made that decision to seek help. So we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. We do not have an after hours per se for our center, but there is the 988 crisis line. Students who live on campus often will contact their RAs and then they can get involved to help with students in crisis. Okay, so what do we serve? What do we provide at our center? We provide individual counseling, and as I said, the student comes for a 45-minute appointment. The first 15 minutes is filling out some paperwork, just their student information. And we have a 20-question survey that they fill out. And the counselor can receive that. It's automatic once the student completes it. And it's color-coded for like overall well-being, depression, anxiety, suicide risk, relationships, and it's either green, yellow, or red. So that counselor can quickly look at that survey and say, oh, this student's high risk for this, or this student's really struggling in relationships. So that when they go to greet that student and meet them, they already have some information of things that they know they need to narrow in on and ask more questions about. So the student meets with the counselor for 30 minutes. And at that point, it is, again, what brings you in today and how can we help you? And at that screening session is where a student will either be referred internally for counseling, in which we offer short term, which is about 6 sessions, or we have a case care manager that helps the student get connected to providers in the community. So I want to caution that sometimes the name of our center is called Counseling Services. So there's a built-in expectation that someone is going to get counseling services at Counseling Services. And so oftentimes students will report back to an instructor or a professor who encouraged them to go to the center and say they couldn't help me there. Because their expectation was they would get counseling at the counseling center. And so when a student's then told, actually, you have maybe a more longer term issue, or this is more of a specialized need that you're presenting with, and we can connect you, what they're hearing is we can't help you here. So what I encourage people who are going to refer students to the counseling center is to help manage that expectation by saying to a student, do you know that there's counseling services over in the KUC and they only do short term, but if you have other needs, or they can help you get connected. So you're already planting that seed and it's not new news to them when they're told, hey, we might need to help you get connected to an outside provider. And also I do have professors call and say, they said you wouldn't help them over there. Mm-hmm. So just to understand that might be a student's perception, but that we always help students get connected. And we tell them if this plan doesn't work, come back and we'll come up with a plan B for you. They're always welcome to return to get more case management if they're struggling getting it. So the other thing that we offer is psychiatry. We have 2 psychiatrists on staff. They're both part-time. So in essence, we have 1 full-time counselor, one psychiatrist there every day of the week. And they offer medication management and will help get a student on medication. One thing I want to be very clear about is that our center, sometimes parents are concerned that their student might go to counseling and they're just going to get put on medication. Or sometimes students want to come in and say, I don't want counseling, I just want to get on medicine. And I think it's important to understand that there are best practices and medication is not considered to be a first-line treatment intervention. That counseling is first something to help with someone struggling with depression or anxiety or stress or even adjustment issues, because a lot of it has to do with how can you increase your coping skills? How can you learn to regulate your emotions better? And a lot of times, once you practice those skills and gain those skills, your symptoms of mental health struggles decrease. Now, that's not true for everyone. And so sometimes we might then say, maybe medication in conjunction with counseling could be helpful for you. And if a student already has a therapist out in the community, but their therapist said maybe medication might be helpful, they can come to our center. Everyone goes through that screening first, and then they can get referred to see one of our psychiatrists. We also offer crisis services. So at any point between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4:30, Monday through Friday, if a student is not sure that they can keep themselves safe, they can be walked over or come to our center, and we will see them immediately and we will safety plan with them. Sometimes students have already been to our center and they've been referred out for longer term care. And they said, oh, I was referred out. It doesn't matter if you've ever been to our center before or not, or if you've been referred out. If you are having a crisis, you are always able to come to our center and we will make sure you're going to be safe. Our crisis services, as I said, are 8 to 4:30. And after that, there's the 988. And a lot of times, the majority of our students on campus don't live on campus who are attending. I think we have 3,000 on campus compared to our overall of 18 to 20,000. So oftentimes those students are in campus apartments or at home. And then there's other resources where they're physically located in those after hours. A lot of times, if not 988, people will call 911 or go to the emergency room. So we offer other options besides short-term counseling, psychiatry, crisis, and referral services. Some of the other things that we offer are workshops. We have a life skills workshop, and those are one and done group sessions. One is for relationships, one is for anxiety, one is for depression, one is for managing loneliness. So a student can attend all of them or just some of them because they don't build on each other. They also are offered online as well. So that's something that we're trying again to help be more convenient for students. And speaking of online, we do offer telehealth. Ever since COVID, we never took it away. Surprisingly, over 80% of students, I wouldn't even have 20% of students that elect telehealth. The vast majority of students want to be seen in person. So, you're trading the convenience for the quality of the counseling experience. The quality of the counseling experience is more important to students necessarily than the convenience pieces, which is interesting. So other life workshops is power of perception, relaxation station workshops, and self-compassion through meditation. We have different counselors who kind of specialize in different areas, and they volunteer every semester to do these workshops. You can find more information about the workshops on our website. The other service or a resource that I think is important to share is that we started in the past 5 years a program called Let's Talk. And Let's Talk is drop-in counseling over at the Student Union. It's from 2 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. The last appointment is 3:30 since it ends at 4. And they're 30-minute counseling sessions that are just kind of one and done. And the reason that we put in this program is other campuses across the country had started it. And it's fulfilling a need for students who've never tried counseling before to see what counseling might be like. Because as I said, a screening appointment, your first access to our counseling center is a screening appointment, which isn't counseling, it's information gathering. So a student may not, and sometimes students are like, well, I thought I get to talk about, actually have counseling today. So this is something that is an option for students who aren't sure if counseling might be helpful or beneficial. Even some students who've had therapists in the past or actually see a therapist off campus had a really, really bad day and know that it's really helpful to talk to a counselor, will come and drop by a Let's Talk. But most often it's students who've never tried counseling before. And what often happens is they're like, oh, that was kind of nice to have someone who's supportive and objective and doesn't have a bias of what I should or shouldn't do, but is just here to be supportive and help me problem solve. Find that they then come in and schedule a screening appointment. So Let's Talk is something that can be really helpful to students, and even students who, as I said, already have providers off campus. You could still suggest that to students, like, oh, I already have a counselor. You can say, well, that's fine, but you shouldn't have two counselors simultaneously and go to each one every week. But if you want to drop in here and there when you've had a really tough day and talk to a counselor, that's perfectly fine. So what I love about our current college students is that self-care has been a buzzword for several years now. And what is really self-care? What I like about our college students is that they are embracing the concept of self-care. They're actually walking the talk. So one of the things that our center has implemented is we have something called a Zen Den in our counseling center. And it's honestly just like a small cubicle, and it's like the dark gray, so it's really nice and kind of homey in there. And we have twinkle lights, and the addition of massage chair has been hugely popular. But we also have a computer where you can either do the Calm app or play like massage or Zen music. We have aromatherapy so that you can put eucalyptus or lavender or to make it smell nice. We have meditation cushions. We have yoga mats. There is art supplies and coloring books. So the students can go online and book this for an hour at a time. And I cannot tell you how wildly popular this is. It is booked solid. And then what's nice is that, you can look at your calendar and say, oh, I've got a midterm in 2 weeks. I'm going to be so stressed. Maybe I'll book either an hour before or right after my midterm. I need to go use this end. But students book far in advance to be able to kind of look at their schedule and schedule when they're going to put in their self-care. And I just love that. I think that's so great. So I mentioned what are other services available on campus. I don't have a slide for it, but I do want to mention that Health Services offers mental health medication management as well. So a lot of times students end up going to Health Services for sore throat or, dermatology or something, and they see the same provider and they might feel comfortable with this person because they've been to them for a couple other issues. And they might feel most comfortable saying, I'm really been feeling anxious. And that provider is trained and capable of prescribing mental health medication. In fact, when you look at family practices or primary care providers, over 60% of what they prescribe on a daily basis is psychotropic medication nowadays. So it's very common. So for someone who has, I don't want to say basic, but straightforward anxiety or depression, for them to start them on a medication. Or a student might say, I took Lexapro a couple years ago and I went off of it. I'd like to go back on it. Okay, we can start you on that. So it's kind of like your point of entry of where students more comfortable. What Health Services will do is if they've tried a couple medicines and they haven't been successful, then they might say this, you're showing some treatment resistance to these typical medicines. Why don't we refer you to the psychiatry and counseling services, and they can. So if you have more than one diagnosis, or if you're having, if being treated if you've had a couple failed medication trials, then they will refer you over to our center. But I just want to share that you can get medication for mental health over at the Health Services. The other place on campus that you can get counseling is called the Center for Counseling and Psychological Services. And that is a training site for the Licensed Professional Counseling Program grad students who have done the majority of their coursework, and it's now time for them to get some training in how to do counseling. What is really neat about their program is their practicum students have a caseload of 5, and they are supervised by a professor who's a licensed mental health provider. So I often tell students, you're actually getting 2 therapists to 1, because you have this, new to the field, eager and wanting to do the best job they can, and And then they're going to be reviewing their session with their supervisor, who's going to provide suggestions and some feedback that they can then take back for the next session. This service or resource is free to students and faculty and staff. So it is with the understanding that these are recorded so that they can review them with their professor. They're all deleted by the end of the semester. What I really like about their center is they offer evening hours, which our center closes at 4:30 every day. There's been some semesters that they've even had Saturday hours. The other positive thing that our center, I wish we had the staff and resources to do, is they see students for a semester. Remember, these are practicum students, so this is their semester practicum. So technically, if a student were to get in September, they could have about 12 sessions with their counselor. The other good thing is they allow up to 3 semesters. So as long as the student understands that every semester there's a new group of practicum students, you're going to have a new counselor, a new therapist, they can have 3 semesters of free counseling. And for students who struggle financially, that's huge. That's great. So I always make sure to mention this as an option for students, and I hope you will share this information as well. And keep in mind, this is also available for faculty and staff and their children. I have a friend of mine who takes their son there. Okay, so we've reviewed services. Part of what my presentation was going to be including was how do you approach students? How do you express concern? Then what do you do? Those kinds of things. Well, there is actually 3 trainings to students and staff for this. The first one is called QPR, which stands for Question, Persuade, Refer. And currently, and this is through, I think the foundation, Cynthia Chafin, I can't remember the name, but it's all grant funded. So MTSU has secured these grants for anyone can. The next available is November 11th, 9 a.m. to 3. So this is saying it's about 6 hours, but I wonder if I have the right times for this one. QPR is typically, my understanding was like 2 hours. So I might have to double check. I might have those for mental health first aid. I don't know. But so QPR is an option for any staff or faculty to go get training of how, and this specifically is for a student who is in so much distress that you're worried they might have suicidal thoughts. And so it's question, are you okay? Persuade, I think it's important for you to get help, and refer, let me take you, or, you know, here's some options. So that is available to all faculty and staff. And the other one that you may have heard of, because it's been around for a few years now, is called Mental Health First Aid. Mental Health First Aid is completely grant funded. It's typically over $300 a person if you have to pay for this training yourself, but it's funded through the university's grant, a grant to the university. What's trickier about this one ever getting shortened is because it's grant funded, well, the other one too, it's very important that they demand that you give exactly the same training every single time. So you can't really, oh, I'll take out this section to condense it for someone. So it is an 8-hour training. What they have done is made it like a half day, one day, and a half day, another day to help with schedules. And some they offer just the full day. What's different about this and QPR is this is all different kinds of mental health. People who might be self-harming or cutting, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. It kind of gives an overview of mental health disorders across the spectrum. Autism is another one. And then it also includes part of how to help a student get connected to resources. So what I would really encourage, even as a whole department, maybe someone could suggest, or during times when things are slow, although I know some departments it's never slow, but there are times, at least for our counseling centers, the summer tends to be slower. That's when we do our planning for groups. So that this would be a really, really good training for you to attend. So services available to faculty and staff. All right, so what I wanted to share with everyone is that there is actually a lot of resources available here at Partners for Health And if you go to this website, and it's basically member benefits, herefortennessee.com member benefits. If you scroll down, you can see your confidential services provided here. Here's counseling services. And it talks about, there's a form you can fill out. In the past, every employee was eligible for up to 5 free counseling. It was previously the EAP, Employee Assistance Program. So it's a submitted emotional well-being solutions authorization request. And so this is where you can see counseling, and you get a limited number of free sessions. They also have the Calm app is free to Tennessee, to MTSU employees. Support for your family. What I thought was really neat is, so parent and youth. So if you have children, and you're struggling with mental health issues with children, work-life support, online support. Virtual behavioral coaching from Able2 provides personal self-paced support for those who need help managing symptoms. And then there, help with food. And so it's basically like a one-stop for anything that you might be struggling with, financial or legal issues, work-life support, so that balance. If you're also caring for someone who's elderly, there's just a lot here that I think not everyone is aware of. And so I wanted to make sure and share that with everyone, that this site, if you just go to Here for Tennessee and to what your member benefits are, you have mental health benefits. You have the free Calm app. There's an Able2, I think that's an app as well. There's support groups and information and resources for autism if you're a parent, have a child with autism. But I think it's so important that as we are caring for our students, it's equally important we're caring for ourselves. And I think that's why I wanted to include that in this presentation today, because we go back to self-care. You can't pour from an empty cup. And so we need to make sure that we're taking good care of ourselves so we can care for our students. All right, so that is the end of my presentation for today. And I'm wondering if there might be any questions either on Zoom or in person.
So Dr. Anderson, for a faculty member, at the end of your presentation, you took us to the Here For You and the services. So for a new faculty person who's just in general, kind of overwhelmed, we're struggling with work-life balance, we're struggling and just all the things. Is that website that's where we might direct them first to kind of take a look here and see what resonates with you, where you might go from here?
Yeah, so there's a mainline number that really is kind of like a helpline, and it's there's 911, and then there's also a 211 or 311, where it's one below a crisis that you can call, and it's all resources for all. That's what that main number here is for Tennessee. Our counseling center often does get calls saying, can you provide, a stress reduction training for, I don't know, the rec center, or if we had the staff, we would love to be able to be a resource for mental health for the entire campus community, but we're under student affairs, and our directive, our mission is to support our students. There have been times when there's extenuating circumstances of suicide on campus, and we were ready and able and willing to help the staff that was here in the library that witnessed or had some type of trauma from that whole experience. So our counseling center very much is responsive to when we have special situations and circumstances where there is clearly a need, and the need is immediate. Oftentimes when there's a trauma, the most important thing is to be able within 24 to 48 hours to be able to debrief. And that can so much help with that healing process. If you haven't had an opportunity to do that, that can kind of make it a little bit more of a struggle to process and work through that. But as far as individual therapy or counseling for staff, we're not able to do that. However, the Center for Counseling and Psychological Services, which is on Bell Street, it's in the Miller Education Building. So it's actually kind of just a hop, skip, and a jump off campus. I think it's a half mile away. Is an option, so you could suggest that, and also the Hereford, Tennessee.
John, are there questions in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat yet, but I have a question. So if a professor identifies that a particular student might be struggling with mental health issues, how do they direct the student to the services you've mentioned without seeming to pry in the individual's life?
Right. To be honest, actually, it's the opposite. The students are an open book and want to share with you. But a lot of it has to do, one, with the comfort level of the professor, and two, the relationship they have with the student. So especially more in the hard sciences, like chemistry and those kinds, students a lot of times will interact via email or D2L. What I would encourage, like we have examples where students will make comments in an assignment or in a paper that is very concerning. And sometimes it's, I think I want to kill myself, or sometimes it's, I'm not sure if I want to be here. Those vague statements, you're not sure how am I supposed to take this? And I get calls, what should I do? And what I encourage in situations like that, where you've read it or someone has shared something in an email to you, is to respond in writing. And the best thing to do is to always start with, I really appreciate you sharing this with me. I'm concerned about you. I want to make sure you're okay. Again, that compassion, and that you're really, they're not just a student, they're a human being. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's resources available on campus for you. And here they are. And I'm more than happy. I have like a Word document or a PDF that I can send where you can copy and paste, and it has our hours, it has Let's Talk, it has the Center for Psychological Services. And you can say to the student, you know, if you, I'd encourage you to check out these resources. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Sometimes students who are in those situations and express that already have providers. Sometimes students say, I've already been there and it didn't help me. And then, you know, so depending on that response, it could be, you know, I'd encourage you to try again. I know now that they, you know, they have specific people on staff to help you get connected. Again, managing those expectations, they may not be seen directly there. Now, if you have a student that comes up to you after class, it kind of opens up. Again, you always have the option, if it's before 4:30 and they're sounding like they really are unstable and you're not sure if they're going to be able to keep themselves safe, to say, why don't we walk over to the counseling center? I just want to show you where it is. That is the best thing to do. And again, I will also tell you that the professor walks in with the student and they said, okay, you know, if you need anything, let me know. I'm glad I got you here, you know. And the professor leaves and the student's like, I've been here before. I don't need to see anyone right now. Or the other thing is we can't disclose what happened to the student for confidentiality reasons. And I'm not telling those stories to be negative. But what the point I'm trying to get across is all we can do is provide resources. And sometimes we worry, did I do enough? Did they get the help they needed? But that information you really can't be privy to unless the student shares it with you afterwards. So I'm telling you those stories just to help you realize that you need to be okay with, I provided this through an email, I showed the student where the counseling center was, you gave them the opportunity to seek help. And that is your role. And again, I also caution that there's times where students start to lean on an instructor and start sending emails in the middle of the night. And to be very careful that you have a healthy boundary there. You know, I'm not a mental health expert. I really, you know, these are things you should be sharing with, I care about you. I hope you're sharing this with your counselor. But so I hope that answered your question of how do you approach that. And again, sometimes we're planting seeds. One other thing I do want to say is that it's important to leave that door open. So if you were to email the student and say, here's these resources, or you were to walk a student over to the counseling center, it's really important to say, are you okay if I check in on you in a couple of days? And so then you can say, how are you doing? Is everything going well? And sometimes students don't respond, sometimes they do. But it's leaving that door open for continued communication.
Thank you.
Any questions? I encourage the Zoom room to post any questions for Dr. Anderson, comments for Dr. Anderson to follow up on. And if they're not, I have one more. So Dr. Anderson, I had to learn the multiple services we had, right? Between MTSU Counseling Services, you mentioned counseling out of College of Education and the training program that they have. So we just gave an example of, I perceive as a faculty member, I have a student in distress. Is MTSU Counseling Services still the first place to go
Yes.
if we perceive a student is in crisis?
Yes.
Would we ever direct a student directly to that training program? Or do you all more take care of that?
We are their main referral source at
Okay.
this point. So that center does not provide crisis services.
Okay.
And after they've done counseling, they'll help them connect if they want to continue counseling elsewhere. But we have, a dedicated staff member who is a case manager, who her whole job is to find out what's available in our community and what's low cost, all those things. So if you have a student that is in crisis or might need help getting connected, you're pretty sure based on what they've told you that they're probably not, 6 sessions is not really likely to resolve their issue. And so you could say, but if they just want counseling, you can go ahead and do that, but we are kind of like the hub,
Sure.
and we can direct the student to that center as well.
Sure. Any other questions for Dr. Anderson?
I've got one.
Sure.
So Melanie Crowder, Outreach Coordinator. Of course, I work with students who are currently homeless, previously in foster care and whatnot. Transportation is an issue. So they're excited that you're here on campus and they can get up to 6 sessions and whatnot. But then the referral comes if long-term is needed. The question would be, do you have access to bus passes or anything of the sort so that a student can follow up with a referral?
Currently, this time, we don't have that type of funding. That would be neat if we could get a grant or something to have like a little pool for funds for something like that. Oftentimes, when students are, financially challenged, which what college student isn't, but there are students that don't have insurance at all, or, don't have transportation. We have many options for outside providers that are telehealth.
Okay, great.
We even, for some students that are like, where would I go for that? Because my roommate's always there. If it's between 8 and 4:30, we can, sometimes we let the Zen be their place where they can do their telehealth appointment. So we can always provide a location if that's an issue on campus for them to do telehealth. But in general, as far as, ideally, like I said, people prefer to see their counselor in person. We sometimes frame it as, in a perfect world, I would love to be able to get you connected, to someone who's nearby, transportation's not an issue and you can afford them. But in this current situation, here are the resources that we've got. And getting counseling through telehealth is definitely far better than no counseling at all. So, but it's interesting, we've been trying to get memo of understanding between Trust Point Hospital and Rolling Hills. And the biggest issue, especially for Rolling Hills, which is in Franklin, is transportation. And so they are actively working to figure out, is there a way that they can have transportation from Murfreesboro here, and same with Trust Point. So transportation is a common struggle, especially when they're not exactly close by, for sure. That's a great question.
Any other questions in the Zoom room
No
or for
questions.
Dr. Anderson?
Thank you for having me today. I have my information up here. Please feel free to contact me if you have any further questions. And again, you can either go to our website and just copy and paste our hours, or again, I can send a PDF document if someone would like that.
Sure.
And that way you just have that resource document available here.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Thank you to all of you all who joined us on Zoom and are here in the center today. Have a great day, everybody.